I'm here with our group of big boys today. This is little Jack. Hey, they're very subdued today. If you follow our FizzyStarRats page on Facebook, you'll know that last weekend we had a very upsetting weekend, a very unexpected event, and we came down and we found poor Sullivan, one of our 9-month-old rats. He'd been perfectly okay a few hours previously, but unfortunately, poor Sullivan had some sort of nasty sort of brain hemorrhage in the night, and he was very, very floppy. He was just very flat on the ground, not moving. And at first I thought he'd passed away in the night, and it was just horrendous to find him like that. And I've talked about losing rats before, and you know, when you have older rats, as horrible as it is, you do know that they are going to pass away, and you just pray that it will be in their sleep and peacefully. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. In most cases, the rats will get sick or have to be put to sleep by the vet. But for poor Sullivan, at just 9 months old, this is just totally unexpected, and there is really nothing you can do to prepare yourself for such a thing. We have never lost a 9-month-old rat before. Previously, the youngest rat that we had lost was Chloe, who was 15 months, who had a tumour in her uterus and also an infection and had to be put to sleep. But it was very obvious when I picked Sullivan up. At first I thought he'd passed away, but then I realised he was actually conscious, and then I felt so bad that I didn't know how long he had been lying there during the night unconscious. He was breathing and his eyes were moving and he was moving his face, but he just really had no power in his limbs and his tail. So poor Sullivan, I mean, we had to have an emergency trip to the vets. Now, you must always be prepared for an emergency trip to the vets. You must not even consider the cost. You have to always, even if it means, you know, you can't go out that night or whatever, you must have your fund and be prepared to visit the vet. Because it was a weekend, I couldn't see my normal vet, but luckily I was able to see a vet who was experienced with rats, and he said straight away, you know, the same as I had thought, that Sullivan, because it happened suddenly, I thought he'd had a stroke. One of his eyes was slightly protruding, which is also an indication there was something going on there in the brain. Now, normally a stroke will come on suddenly. They can be mild or they can be very severe, but the vet seems to think that Sullivan actually probably had a sort of genetic problem, that maybe he had a brain tumour that had previously shown no symptoms, and that suddenly he'd had a hemorrhage from the tumour. And we'll never really know because we don't have post-mortems on the rats. It doesn't really help us, and it just takes money away from that we could use for the other rats. So, you know, we had Sullivan put to sleep. He'd had painkillers. He hadn't improved on the time, from the time we found him to the time we went to the vet, and there was nothing else we could do. You cannot leave a rat to suffer. You know, they have to be humanely put to sleep at the vets. And as you'll know from my other video, we always have them put to sleep with the general anaesthetic gas before the final injection is used, so that the rat is not stressed and doesn't feel any pain. And it was just absolutely, you know, heartbreaking to have him put to sleep. And it's just something I hope I never have to do again with another young rat, but it's all part of rescuing rats, and you have to be prepared that this can happen, and it's why it's so important that you do have your emergency fund. That's little Jim there. So the boys are all very subdued without Sullivan, and Sullivan was a very quiet rat, but he'd rapidly turned into a very cuddly rat. Over the last few weeks, he'd really come out of his shell a bit, and he wasn't as nervous as he originally was, and you know, we're just desperately going to miss him, and he was such a beautiful colour as well. He's one of our Siamese boys, but he had a beautiful colouring. And, you know, we're all very upset, but it is part of rescuing rats. These things happen. And even if you're not rescuing, you know, and you have perfectly healthy rats, the illnesses can occur suddenly out of the blue. So I can't really give you much advice on how to prepare yourself, because you just don't know it's going to happen. But it's just a thing of, with time, you will get over it. We always take lots of pictures and videos so that we can remember the happy times. And I put some pictures on Facebook of this group when they were quite tiny, because I've been looking back today and trying to get the image of Sullivan so ill out of my brain. And that's how I try to do it, is going back and looking and seeing him happy and healthy and with his brothers. So, you know, I hope that you never have to experience something like this. But if it does happen, you know, just be aware that sudden illnesses can happen, whatever age the rat is, and be prepared to get them the veterinary help that they need.